story is entitled Hostages of Fear, written by Corpse Child. I survived the strangest hostage situation. The gunman told me to not be afraid. My body trembled. I didn't see the flashes of the barrel, nor the two bodies that hit the floor almost instantly. I only heard them, dropping with a resounding "this" just in front of the exit. That made 4 dead now, all shot at point-blank range. I slowly looked up from the ground, being met with the antagonized face of one of them. It was still frozen in an expression of fright as he twitched and writhed. I'd heard them too, screaming and crying out right before he shot them. Beside me was the teller who'd been making my withdrawal, now shaking much more violently than I was, and I could hear her sobbing. I remember she was the first to see him. She was the first scream when he first drew his gun. That was when he opened fire, shooting the first 2. I'm sure the first was meant for her, but she ducked down just before he got the shot off, causing the bullet to hit the man behind her. Then I dropped down, and the man opened fire again at the opening and let out a choked scream. That's when the 2 others ran for the exit, only to be stopped by bullets to the back. For a moment, everything was quiet, save for the sound of the man's footsteps strolling up and down the front area like a prison warden. The silence was broken when I heard a woman shouting, "Please, don't do this. I have a..." I looked up to see him hunched over the body of another teller. She was still alive, writhing and convulsing. Eventually her body relaxed and she was still lifeless. He then turned in the direction of me and my teller. His face was calm. It wasn't crazed or angry or even afraid. He was smiling, not like a maniac, but like how your friend would at you. He appeared calm, gentle, and almost warm and inviting in a way. This only terrified me more. I didn't know what to expect here, but I was afraid to move or scream, seeing what happened with the others.
"It's okay,"
he announced in the same gentle tone that matched the look on his face.
"Don't be afraid. I've come to save you."
He started in my direction, still smiling. I slowly put my hands up and took a deep breath. "Keep calm," I said to myself. He was about a foot or 2 away when he stopped and raised his gun. I was about to duck back down when I noticed that the gun wasn't pointed at me. That's when the teller shrieked and I saw the barrel flash as the shot rang out. Despite the adrenaline pushing me at that moment, I stood still. The bullet missed the teller's head by a ½ inch and she was frantically scrambling away on her hands and knees while he was cocking his gun for another shot. "Wait!" I exclaimed, positioning myself directly in front of the barrel. His head cocked to the side and his smile dropped a little, looking more like he was pondering something he found interesting. "Look, let's talk, okay? Just you and me." His warm smile returned and he chuckled amusedly.
"What's your name, child?"
he asked, sounding gentle and welcoming. I'm Violet." He chuckled again.
"That's a very pretty name for a very pretty girl."
He lowered the gun and I took baby steps towards him. What's your name?" I asked, slowly inching my way towards him. I figured as long as I kept him talking, he'd keep his guard down and I'd be able to make it to him without getting shot. What I was going to do once I did, though, I wasn't sure yet. I had to just act in the moment and hope for the best. Luckily for me, he wasn't a big guy. Actually, he was extremely gaunt and his skin was almost deathly pale. He looked sick. I thought this might at least give me a slim hope of disarming him or something once I reached him, despite knowing nothing of fighting or any real big self-defense tactics at the time. Just a swift kick to his...
"Gabriel,"
he said softly.
"My name is Gabriel, and I've come to save you all."
I inched closer to him. "Save us from what?" I was about 2 feet from him now. He looked up at the ceiling. I took a few more steps, readying to either kick him in the groin or move out of the way again when I stopped. him looking back to me and raising his gun. Before I could react, I saw him turn and shoot the teller off to my right. I looked to see that the bullet hit her straight in the midsection of her back.
"I've come to save you from that,"
he declared, pointing the gun back to me. The teller's body was still twitching. I was about to rush to her when he aimed the gun at me. "Look, she's still alive," I cried. "You have to let me help her." He looked over to her and said,
"No, child, she is not alive. She's not been alive for a long time now. None of them have."
He looked around at the bodies of the others sprawled across the floor.
"But they're free now."
"Free?" I wondered. What the hell does he mean by... Panic shot through me when I saw him then turn the gun in the direction of a woman who was huddling her little boy close to her chest. He walked closer to them. I heard the woman choke out a squeal as she hugged the child closer to her body. When he reached them, he knelt down and reached out towards the little boy's face, attempting to stroke his cheek. When the child turned and burrowed his face in his mother's chest, Gabriel stood up again and sighed. His face was saddened, like the child's reaction had somehow hurt him on some emotional level. Still wearing this expression, he cocked his gun again and aimed it towards them.
Not even the young are spared.
This time, I rushed him. I'd already let the teller and the others die. I wasn't about to just stand and watch him execute a child. I threw my shoulder into him, causing him to stumble to the left and causing him to pull the trigger. It missed the mother, and she used the opportunity to try and make a break for it. Gabriel was about to aim at them again when I threw myself at him again and began attempting to wrestle the gun from him. Despite what I said earlier about him not being a big guy, his grip was like bear trap on the gun. As I struggled with him, his face was still so calm and gentle. He looked like it wasn't even a struggle for him to hold on to the gun. Finally, I scratched at his face, sending a fierce swipe across his right eye that caused him to actually retract in pain. This caused him to drop the gun, and I quickly broke away from him. I quickly made a break for it and grabbed the gun. "Hands in the air," I said, now pointing the gun at him. He looked back at me, smiling warmly, his hands motionless by his side. "I said, hands up, now!" Admittedly, my hand shook as I held the gun.
"Do it, child,"
he said, walking towards me.
"Do it. Have no fear, child."
He continued towards me slowly. My finger wrapped around the trigger and I began to squeeze, but I couldn't seem to go through with it. My mind was screaming at me to pull the fucking trigger, but I froze. I looked into his eyes, his friendly, welcoming eyes. These weren't the eyes of a monster, but they didn't seem entirely human either. I can't really explain it, but something about his smile emanated more of a peaceful quality, like he was about to lead me to the gates of heaven or something.
"Why do you hesitate?"
he asked, now just an inch away from the barrel.
"Are you afraid to, child?"
No, I stammered.
"Then do it. Shoot me. Prove that fear has not corrupted you."
"What?" I was lost. What in the name of God in heaven is he talking about? What does he mean by corrupted me? My hand, as well as my body, shook much more violently now, yet my fingers remained frozen.
"Prove to me that you are strong, that you aren't afraid."
He was cut off when, out of what must have been an accidental reflex, the gun fired. I closed my eyes in shock. The gun resonated all through the walls. "Oh my God! I did it! I killed him!" Opening my eyes, I saw that he was still standing. He was leaning back, having been pushed away by the force of the shot, but he still stood. That's when I noticed that he wasn't bleeding from the hole centered directly in the middle of his chest. How in the hell? For another half minute or so, his body remained frozen in that pose before beginning to twitch violently. It wasn't like the convulsions one would experience during cardiac arrest or anything like that, like you'd expect from someone who'd been shot. Instead, his seizures appeared to speed up until they convulsed at almost supersonic level. That's when his head, still seizing, snapped up and looked back at me. His eyes were two burning white orbs that each glowed like tiny suns in his sockets. His mouth opened, and I heard him start speaking in these indistinct whispers. They sounded snake-like, being mostly raspy and sounding like what most people think a ghost would sound like. Then, from inside his mouth, I saw the same bright glowing coming from his mouth. My eyes started to burn, and I had to turn away.
"Be not afraid, my child."
His voice boomed in my ears. I slowly opened my eyes to find that everything was gray. What I mean by this is that the room looked the same, the lobby area of the bank, except now the color was gone. Everything was just a blank outline of what the room was before. When I turned around though, Gabriel's body was almost completely different. He didn't look like the lanky 5'7.5" tall man with a warm smile anymore. He didn't even look like a freaking person. Instead, there was a blazing aurora in the general shape of a man standing in front of me with long, wispy tendrils of light coiling from his back. My heart stopped, my jaw dropped, but I couldn't make a sound. The thing that was Gabriel moved towards me, gliding weightlessly through the air. I raised the gun again, acting out of a dormant instinct. I sent 3 more rounds into his chest, but he continued towards me, not affected in the slightest.
"Lower your weapon, child,"
the voice boomed.
"You have proven yourself to me."
Proven myself? I stammered, now finding the strength to speak. What the hell? What are you? My mind and my heart were racing, completely overclocked with what was happening.
"I told you, I am Gabriel. I am the one that was sent to save you all."
Save me? From what?
"From fear. Fear is what keeps you as a slave."
I didn't know what to say or do next. I wanted to empty the rest of the magazine into him, but at the same time, aside from the already established fact that apparently Glock rounds had no effect on him, I wanted answers. What are you talking about? A slave to what? He raised one of his arms and pointed it to the ceiling. From above, I could see what looked like thousands of thin white strings coming down from the small white oval shape that circled overhead. What the hell is
"That,"
he bellowed, cutting me off,
"is your maker, your oppressor, God, the greatest puppet master of all. He keeps you alive, only to be bound to an existence of fear. He uses fear to keep you all in line."
What are these? I asked, looking at the strings.
"You are his puppets, and these are your strings. Your fear doesn't allow you to see them. He forces you to be this way. That is why I'm here. I have come to set you all free."
Setting us free? I cried. You murdered them! Innocent fucking people! How the fuck is that setting us free?
"I told you, they were never alive, but they can be now, forever free from his bond." My head actually started aching. What did he mean by they were never alive? How can they be alive now? He passed the other arm around the room. "Look at them." I looked around to see the bodies of the others sprawled across the floor, all of them still twitching violently. They, like the rest of the lobby was now, were colorless. Then I watched the body of one of the first men who were shot cry out as a white mist seemed to be forced from him. Upon being ejected from the man's body, the mist flew straight up into the oval. This exorcism-like process repeated with one of the others. What's happening to them? The rest then joined in the strange phenomenon. "They are free now," he replied. What is that white cloud? What even are you? Hell, where are we? I couldn't hold myself back from essentially letting everything out. Confusion, anger, frustration, and panic. All of these, all at once. "Calm down, child," he said in that calm, friendly, yet still thunderous voice. "What you are seeing is the truth. This is what the world truly looks like.
This? I scoffed. This is the world? It's just a gray space of nothing. How is this what the world looks like? He moved closer towards me again.
Fear, Violet, causes a man to be blind of its beauty. Man has always been born with an instinctual fear of that which he does not know, that which is not understood. Because of this, man is kept blind of the unknown. And when someone wields this blindness as a weapon, as he does,
he pointed up again,
man cannot ever see the beauty of the truth.
I looked up at the white oval again. Why? What does he want?
Control. He only strives for control. That is why and how he keeps you blind to the unknown. He himself fears those like me and you and the others are now. Those whose eyes have been opened to the potential of the unknown. He feared that man would be on equal footing with him, so he's kept you all bound by fear. Hostages to your fear, essentially.
I was stunned. From the oval above, I watched as the white oval expanded, and inside were two gigantic ivory white hands that were attached to what I could only describe as a mass of large eyeballs, each of them with different colored irises and veins that glowed bright red with rage. What's happening now? I cried, watching in amazement and terror as the oval opened, now fully exposing what's on the other side.
He's seen what I've done,
Gabriel replied.
He sees that they've been freed and he's enraged.
I could feel the ground shift beneath me. What is he doing?
He's attempting to swallow you. He wants to bring you back into his domain where he'll then rebind you.
What do I do?
Fear is the source of his control. You still fear him. You still fear the unknown, despite now seeing the truth. Let go of your fear, Violet. Embrace the unknown.
How? My arms felt like spaghetti, and I could feel my knees buckling from beneath me. The oval expanded, taking in more and more of the lobby. I was hopelessly lost. How do I make this stop? How am I supposed to fight my fear? How do I embrace the unknown? I watched as the bodies of the others then rose, all of them adopting a spectral form like Gabriel. I saw that the white oval's expansion seemed to be interrupted by this.
Fear is the source of his power.
Gabriel's words began to resonate in my head. They weren't afraid anymore.
You see now, Violet? They are no longer afraid. They have seen now that death is nothing to be afraid of. They have conquered their greatest fear, and thus, he no longer holds this power over them. You must conquer yours.
I wanted to ask him how I was supposed to do this when it hit me. I understood it now. I looked again at the others. They had been afraid to die when Gabriel began shooting, but as they were dying, they must have somehow seen what I'd seen, the unknown. It was like Gabriel was saying. They were able to see the strings like I did, and realized that by accepting death, they would become something more human. They'd be free. The oval was regaining momentum again, now swallowing almost half the lobby. The being within started to reach out to grab me. I knew there was only one way now to put an end to this, to free myself like Gabriel and the others. I took a deep breath and stared defiantly straight into the thing's many eyes and said, I am not afraid of you. Just before the hand could seize me, I turned the gun to my stomach and fired. Instantly, the gun fell from my hands and I fell to the ground, writhing and seizing like the others did. As I laid there, my body began to feel hot, and with a scream, I watched the white mist force its way from my mouth and flow into the white oval. This caused the being to let out an almost earth-shaking bellow that sounded like it was the mix of thousands of people all screaming at once before finally retracting inside the oval. I then felt myself go numb as my own body began to glow a burning, orange aurora. I could see everything. Everything appeared to me now as a mix of every color imaginable, and they were constantly shifting, changing, and blending from one color to the next. Everything was alive. It was all beautiful. The white oval shrank until it finally closed. Before it did, I met gaze with the being, with God, one last time. For that split second, I swear that I could see it in his eyes as he looked at me. Fear. Once the white oval was gone, that's when things went dark. When I finally came to, I was back in the lobby, surrounded by police. I looked around to see that everyone was alive. I saw the mother that had run away earlier, though now she looked different. Her body and the body of her son now seemed covered by the white mist. They were still bound by their fear. I could see it now, like Gabriel did. The same was true for the police officers who were in the process of arresting Gabriel. As they led him away, he turned to us and smiled his friendly smile one last time. Later, I and the others were being carried out of the bank on stretchers by paramedics. I could move my legs just fine. In fact, I told them I couldn't feel any pain from the bullet in my stomach, which was true. I remember the look of shock they had when I was able to stand and pick myself up from the stretcher. The next thing I remember was being asked 1,000 questions as to what happened. How, despite all being shot, all of us were still alive and healthy. Not knowing what else to say, I told them the truth, or at least what I understood the truth to be. I knew he wouldn't understand it. How could he, or anybody else for that matter? They're still bound by fear. Eventually, they let me go, realizing that I couldn't provide any explanation they'd understand. The incident was kept out of the news in the paper, cropping up only occasionally on social media with headlines of mass shooting in bank with unexplainable occurrence. I like to think these are others who conquered the hold of fear like me, Gabriel, and the others, speaking out the truth. That's why I'm writing this. I'm spreading the message, the truth, just as Gabriel did. Human beings are something far more than what we've known. We are something better, something elevated and beautiful that isn't meant to be contained or controlled. I know this now, and it knows, and because of this, it's afraid. So I beg you, whatever you're afraid of, death, loneliness, whatever, let go. Your fear is the source of his power. Only you can take that from him. Whatever it takes. Free yourself from fear. After all, the most horrifying thing to me, even now, is the idea of forever being a slave, a hostage to fear itself.